The last words my father ever said to me, or so I thought, were screamed across the front lawn while I just stood there with a single duffel bag. "You are no son of mine. If you walk out that door, you're dead to us. You will have nothing. You will be nothing." My mother just stood behind him, a silhouette in the doorway, her face a mask of stone-cold disappointment. Her silence. That was a betrayal sharper than any blade. They weren't just kicking me out. They were erasing. Me, at 18 years old, my own parents pronounced me dead. They held the funeral right there on the perfect lawn of our perfect suburban home. The funny thing is, they were right. The boy who stood there, trembling and broken, he did die that day. And from his ashes, someone else was born. Someone they would one day come begging to for help. Someone they wouldn't even recognize. Thought they were writing my ending? I had no idea. They were just writing the prologue. That front door clicking shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of absolute finality. 1 second, I was their son, the heir to a legacy I never even wanted. My future already mapped out in boardrooms and country clubs. The next, I was a ghost, haunting the sidewalk in front of my own home. And what was my crime? I refused to be his carbon copy. My father had built a respectable construction empire. It was his life's work, and it was supposed to be mine. I saw my future in blueprints and balance sheets. I saw mine in lines of code. He dreamed of me taking over the family business. I dreamed of building something he couldn't understand, okay? And because of that, couldn't control. This fight had been simmering for years, a quiet war fought over the dinner table. To him, my passion for technology was a personal insult. He called it playing with toys. My desire to study computer science across the country instead of business at the local college. That was the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just a career path. It was a rejection of his entire world. The final explosion was brutal and fast. I'd gotten my acceptance letter, a full-ride scholarship to one of the best tech programs in the country. I was naive. I thought the scholarship, the prestige, might win him over. Instead, he saw it as a one-way ticket to a life that didn't include him, and he couldn't stand it. He gave me an ultimatum: tear up the letter and enroll in the business program he'd chosen, or get out and never come back. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. One chose myself. I chose the terrifying, unknown future over the comfortable, suffocating one he offered. And just like that, he disowned me. This wasn't just drama. It was a formal declaration. I was no longer family. I was a stranger. Few hours were a blur. I just walked. I walked until the neighborhood faded into anonymous city streets. The $400 in my wallet felt like both a fortune and an insult. It was everything I had. My bank account, a joint account with my parents, was already frozen. My car, a birthday gift, was sitting in their driveway. Its keys now useless on my KEYCHAIN. That first night, I slept on a bench in a 24-hour bus station. The cold of the plastic seeped right into my bones. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face twisted in rage and my mother's completely blank. That was the real wound, not his anger, but her indifference. Her silence was her consent. Being thrown out by your own family attacks the very core of who you are. I felt like a defective product being recalled, fundamentally flawed. The world of privilege and security I had known was gone. I was completely, utterly alone. A deep, gnawing sadness was my constant companion, and hopelessness was the only blanket I had at night. My self-esteem was obliterated. I mean, if the two people who are supposed to love you unconditionally can just throw you away like trash, what value could you possibly have? I found a room for rent in a rundown house, sharing a bathroom with 4 other people. First and last month's rent ate up almost all my cash. My new home was a single room with a lumpy mattress on the floor and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. It was a prison cell, but it was mine. I got a job washing dishes at a greasy spoon diner. The late-night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The smell of stale coffee and disinfectant just clung to me. I'd get home as the sun was rising, my body aching, and crash into a dreamless sleep, only to wake up to the crushing weight of my new reality. My college plans felt like a joke. The scholarship covered tuition, but not living expenses, not books, not the flight to get there. I was trapped. The dream that had cost me my family was now impossible. The irony was suffocating, but underneath it all, a deep, simmering anger started to build. Anger is a powerful fuel. You can let it burn you down, or you can use it to light a fire. I was a boy with nothing but a duffel bag, a broken heart, and a world of rage. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to choose fire. That first year was a monotonous cycle of exhaustion and desperation. The diner job paid just enough for rent and a diet of instant noodles. I was a ghost, ashamed, convinced my failure was branded on my face for everyone to see. The college dream was the one thing that kept me going. I deferred my admission for a year, a desperate gamble to buy myself time. I knew I couldn't save enough washing dishes. I needed another way. My lifeline came in the form of a 24-hour library. After my shift, I'd go there instead of my depressing room. It was warm, quiet, and it had free Wi-Fi. That's where I started teaching myself everything. I devoured online tutorials on programming, web design, and digital marketing. The world of code was a refuge. It was logical. Unlike the chaotic mess of my life in coding, if you got the structure right, it just worked. It was clean. I started taking tiny, pathetically low-paying freelance jobs online. My first gig was designing a logo for a pet groomer for $20. It took me 10 hours. It's $2 an hour. It was humiliating, but it was a start. It was money I earned with a skill I taught myself. That $20 bill felt more valuable than any allowance I'd ever gotten. Slowly, I built a portfolio. I made basic websites for local businesses for a couple $100, sometimes just for a good review. My strategy, born from desperation, was to underpromise and overdeliver. A life became a triangle. The diner, my room, the library. No friends, no fun, no joy. Just the grind. This period was incredibly lonely. The trauma of being abandoned had left me with deep trust issues. I was building walls around my heart, determined to become so self-sufficient that I would never need anyone again. The turning point came about 8 months in. Small real estate agency needed a new website. The owner, a woman named Sarah, was unimpressed with the quotes she was getting and took a chance on me. She didn't just want a website. She wanted a whole system to manage her listings. This was it. I poured everything I had into that project. For 3 weeks, I barely slept. I coded until my eyes burned. I built her a custom system from scratch, way beyond what she was expecting. So when I showed it to her, she was floored. She paid me $2,000. It felt like winning the lottery. But more than the money, it was the validation. Someone saw my skill and valued it. Sarah became my first champion, referring me to other business owners. Suddenly, I wasn't just the dishwasher anymore. I was the web guy. I quit the diner, best moment of my life. I used Sarah's money to buy a powerful used laptop. My tiny room became my office. The work started flowing in. I was still just scraping by, but the desperation was being replaced by momentum. I applied to my college program again, but this time for online-only attendance. It was perfect. I could work and study at the same time. College was different for me. I wasn't there for the parties. I was there to learn. My real-world experience gave me a massive head start. I aced my courses not because I was a genius, but because my survival depended on it. By 21, my freelance work was a legitimate small business. I was earning a stable income, more than my father probably thought was possible for a kid playing with toys. I moved into a real apartment. The first night, standing in the empty, quiet living room, I realized I hadn't just survived. I was building a life, but success didn't magically heal the wounds. I still had a deep-seated fear of abandonment. My relationships were superficial. I kept everyone at arm's length. The belief that I was fundamentally unlovable was a hard ghost, too. Killed at the real shift happened when I started my own company at 23. I'd graduated with honors and had a solid roster of clients. I registered an LLC, Phoenix Digital. A cheesy but true nod to my own rebirth. I hired my first employee, a talented designer named Mark. I met in an online forum. Scaling from a freelancer to a business owner was a whole new struggle. It required trust, which was terrifying. But Mark was patient and brilliant, and he slowly broke down my defenses. He became my first real friend since the exile. We started landing bigger clients, finding our niche, creating complex web applications. For mid-sized companies, we were lean, fast, and good. At 25, 5 years after my dad told me I would be nothing, Phoenix Digital crossed $1 million in revenue. I had the nice car, the tailored suits, the investment portfolio, the very definition of success my father worshipped. The irony was so thick you could choke on it, but it all felt hollow. It was a fortress, and I was still a prisoner inside. I had proven him wrong, but I still felt like that worthless kid on the sidewalk. That's when I finally invested in therapy. Admitting I needed help felt like a weakness, a crack in the armor I'd built so carefully. It was a messy, painful process of learning to forgive them not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness didn't mean condoning what they did. It meant releasing the power their actions had over me. It meant accepting that their inability to love me was about their own limits, not my worth. I started building a chosen family. Mark, my first employee, became my coup and closest friend. I started to let people in, to be vulnerable. It was scary, but it was also the first time I felt truly rich. By the time I was 28, I was a millionaire several times over. My company had offices in 3 cities. More importantly, I was finding peace. I had built an identity defined not by their rejection, but by my own resilience. I rarely thought about them anymore. They were ghosts from another life, until one day a ghost decided to call. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a board meeting presenting quarterly projections. My phone, set to silent, buzzed on the table. Unknown number, I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again, annoyed, I glanced at the screen. The area code was from my old hometown. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I excused myself and stepped out onto the office balcony, my heart pounding. I answered, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was frail, hesitant, but I knew it instantly. It was my mother. "Michael, is that you?" Hearing her say my name after a decade of silence felt like a punch to the gut. Shock, rage, confusion, a whole war of emotions exploded inside me. "What do you want?" My voice was ice. She started crying, a weak, pathetic sound. "Michael, we need you. We need your help." I almost laughed out loud. The audacity, "You need my help. After 10 years of nothing, you call me because you need something. Please, son," she sobbed. "Your father, he's not well. It's a business. It's all gone." The story came tumbling out. The construction empire my father had sacrificed his family for was in ruins. He'd refused to modernize, and his pride had choked the business to death. Bad investments, a recession. They declared bankruptcy 6 months ago. They lost everything. The house, the cars, all of it. He had a heart attack last month, she said, her voice cracking. The stress, we're in a small apartment. The medical bills are piling up. We have nothing. I just stood there listening to the collapse of the world that had thrown me out. I didn't feel triumphant. It's just a vast, empty coldness. They weren't calling to apologize. They were calling because their crisis had become unmanageable. The son they'd thrown away had become their last-ditch emergency fund. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. We saw you, she whispered. There was an article in a business magazine. About your company, it said. It said you were very successful. Of course, it wasn't about me, their son. It was about me, the ATM. The rage I thought I'd dealt with came roaring back. Let me get this straight, I said, my words like chips of ice. You throw me out with nothing? For 10 years, I don't exist. But you see my name in a magazine next to a dollar sign, and suddenly you remember you have a son. It wasn't like that, she stammered, but it was a pathetic lie. It was exactly like that, I snapped. You didn't want a son, you wanted an obedient employee. When I refused, I was worthless. Now your business is gone and you need a new asset to cash in, so you call me. The silence on the other end was all the confirmation I needed. Your father wants to see you, she said finally. He wants to talk. A meeting. A negotiation. Not a reunion. Part of me, a small wounded part I thought was long dead, felt a pull. But the man I had become knew this was a trap. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. I walked back into the boardroom, my face pale. Sorry, I said, my voice steady. Let's continue. I compartmentalized, a skill I had perfected long ago. But my mind was back on that lawn, an 18-year-old boy with a duffel bag. 2 days later, an email arrived. It was from my father. The message was short and blunt. It read like a business proposal. Michael, your mother told me she spoke to you. I was against it, but we are in a difficult position. I have made mistakes. We need to talk. There is a diner off the highway near your old high school. Be there Saturday at noon. No, I'm sorry. No, I miss you. Just a summons. He was the same arrogant, controlling man. He wasn't asking for a reconciliation. He was arranging a bailout. And he just expected me to show up. The decision tore me apart. My friend Mark told me, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. He was right, and yet, I had to go. I needed to look the ghosts who had haunted my life in the eye. I had to close this chapter, not on their terms, but on mine. I wasn't going there to save them. I was going there to save myself. This wouldn't be a reunion. It would be a reckoning. The diner was a relic of cheap vinyl and stale coffee, the perfect place for this. I arrived at noon on the dot. I didn't come as their son. I came as the CEO of Phoenix Digital. I wore one of my most expensive suits, armor. I saw them huddled. In a corner booth, they looked small. The titan who haunted my nightmares was just a tired old man in a worn-out polo shirt. My mother sat beside him, twisting a paper napkin into shreds. I didn't slide into the booth. I pulled up a chair and sat at the head of the table, a position of power. I placed my phone and the keys to my German sedan on the table between us. Then silence. I let them feel the shift. My father spoke first, his voice raspy. Michael, you came. You summoned me. I replied, my tone flat. So what do you want? He bristled. Is that any way to talk to your father? I leaned forward. My father told me I was dead to him 10 years ago on his front lawn. So I'll ask again. As one stranger to another, what do you want? My mother flinched. My father's face went white, but the fight just drained out of him. He was a king with no kingdom. We need help, he said, the words tasting like ash. He slid a folder across the table. I didn't touch it. And you think I'm the solution? I stated. Your family, my mother whispered. Family helps family. I laughed. A cold, sharp, brutal sound. Family, this isn't family. Family doesn't throw their son away. Family doesn't disappear for a decade and then crawl back when they see a magazine article. This is not a family reunion. This is a shakedown. I gave you everything. My father insisted, his voice rising with desperation. No, I said calmly. You gave me a roof and food, and for that the child I was is grateful. But you demanded my soul as payment. You demanded I kill my dreams to serve yours. Right. When I chose to be my own person, you threw me in the trash. Turned to my mother, Kay, and you, I said, my voice softening with pity, not kindness. You just stood there. Your silence was your signature on my death warrant. So don't you dare talk to me about family. She broke down, sobbing. My father looked up, his eyes pleading. What do you want, Michael? An apology. Fine, I'm sorry. I was wrong now. Will you help us? It was the most pathetic, self-serving apology I'd ever heard. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry it had all blown up in his face. This was the moment, the choice. I could write a check and buy their silence, or I could finally choose myself again. I came here today for closure, I said, standing up, to see what had become of the people who haunted me. And now I see you haven't changed. You're just broken. You broke yourselves with the same pride you used to try and break me. I will not be giving you any money. The words hit them like a physical blow. You ungrateful whelp. My father screamed. You'd let your own parents live in poverty? You are not my parents, I said, my voice ringing with finality. You gave up that role 10 years ago. You are the architects of your own misery. You made your choices, now live with them. It's just like I had to live with yours. I turned to my mother. I'm not doing this to be cruel, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. I'm doing this for me. Giving you money wouldn't fix what's broken. It would just mean I agree that this relationship is salvageable. It isn't. I pulled out my wallet, took out a single $100 bill, and placed it on the table. Is for the coffee, and it's the last dollar you will ever get from me. I turned and walked away. My father was screaming insults behind me, but his voice sounded weak, distant. I walked out into the bright sunlight, head held high. I didn't feel happy. I felt free. The chains of anger, resentment, and that childish need for their love. They shattered. The reckoning was over, and I had one. For a long time, my journey was a lonely one. But it taught me that your strength isn't just about what you can survive. It's about the boundaries you're willing to draw to protect yourself. So many of us are trapped by expectations that were never ours to begin with. If you've ever felt like you had to fight for your own identity, then you get it. This is a community for people who choose themselves. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, sharing a time you had to make that choice. Your story matters. Walking away from that diner was like walking out of a tomb. The air felt lighter. The weight I'd been carrying for a decade was just gone. In the weeks that followed, I kept waiting for the guilt or regret to hit me. But all I felt was a profound sense of peace. My decision not to give them money wasn't revenge, was self-preservation, was the final step in my own healing. My life now isn't defined by them. Defined by the empire I built, not of money, but of relationships and self-worth. Chosen family, my friends, and my team rallied around me. Their support is the only inheritance I'll ever need. Phoenix Digital is still growing, but my motivation has changed. It's not about proving my father wrong anymore. It's about creating something meaningful. I started a foundation that gives scholarships and mentorship to young people from tough backgrounds who want to get into tech, especially those who don't have family support. I'm trying to be the person I needed when I was 18. The scars from being disowned never completely fade, but I've learned that scars are just a sign that you were wounded and you healed. My past is part of my story, but it's not the whole story anymore. I never heard from them again. I don't know what happened to them, and I've made my peace with that. You can't control the family you're born into, but you have absolute power to choose the family you build. Your value is not determined by anyone else's approval. It's forged in your own resilience, your own integrity, and your courage to live a life that is truly yours. My father told me I'd be nothing without him. He was wrong. I became everything because of him. His rejection was the catalyst that forced me to find a strength I never knew I had. It was the most painful gift I ever received. They disowned me, but in the end, they gave me the freedom to own myself. And that's a fortune no amount of money can ever buy.